Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dean.
And I'm Akasha. We cover the latest in all things science, technology, and culture, with new episodes dropping every Monday.
From the latest advances in knowledge systems and information theory to exploring emerging mediums of art and medicine. Join us as we do bite-sized deep dives on the latest.
The shift is now.
Ever feel like you just need to hit that reset button on life? All you need is to just breathe. Well, get this, listener. Turns out there might be something to that whole breathing thing after all. We're diving deep into the world of breathwork today to see if it can really help us wrestle those mental health struggles, like stress, anxiety, even depression. And you sent over some really interesting research, so let's jump right in.
It is amazing how often we forget about the power of our own breath, right? It's this free, always available tool we can use to potentially feel calmer, more balanced. And these studies you sent over, they really highlight that.
I know, right? It's like we're constantly looking for these complicated solutions when maybe something as basic as changing how we breathe could make a real difference. So let's unpack this first study on the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga Program, or SKY. It focuses on using specific breathing techniques to help people manage depression and anxiety. What really struck me here was they found these structured breathing exercises led to some really significant improvements for the participants.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable, isn't it? Especially when you consider that many people in the study were dealing with mild to moderate depression and anxiety. Imagine experiencing fewer of those anxious thoughts or that, heavy feeling of depression, potentially just from changing how you breathe.
I know. It makes you wonder why it works. Is it the specific way they're breathing? The consistency of the practice? Or maybe even a placebo effect? Because people believe it will help.
That's a really good question, and honestly, we need more research to know for sure. This particular study had some limitations. A number of people dropped out, and there wasn't a control group for comparison.
That's fair. More research is always a good thing. But speaking of research, you also included a study about axial spondyloarthritis. And now I know that sounds like a mouthful. But stick with me here. It actually reveals some super interesting connections between breathwork and inflammation.
And inflammation, as you know, is a big deal. It's not just about a sore knee after a run. Chronic inflammation plays a role in so many health issues, including mental health.
Right. So even though this study wasn't focused on things like depression and anxiety directly, it gives us some clues about how powerful breathwork might be. Can you tell me more about what they did in this study?
Absolutely. So axial spondyloarthritis is a chronic inflammatory disease. And the researchers were curious if a program that combined breathing exercises with things like cold exposure and meditation could actually reduce that inflammation.
Wow, they weren't messing around. They went all in on the wellness tools.
They did.
Yeah.
And what they found is really intriguing. Participants who went through this program had a significant decrease in their ESR level.
Okay, hold on. ESR levels. Break that down for me, would you?
You got it. ESR stands for erythrocyte sedimentation rate. It's essentially a measure of how much inflammation is in your body. The higher the ESR, the more inflammation you have going on.
Gotcha. So the participants' inflammation levels went down. That's a good thing, right?
Exactly. Plus, they said their disease activity felt better and their overall quality of life improved. Pretty amazing.
Okay, this is where my mind starts to get blown. So we're seeing a possible link between breathwork, the nervous system, inflammation, and even our mental well-being. It's like this whole interconnected web we're just starting to understand.
I know, right? And it's important to remember this doesn't mean ditching your meds or therapy, but maybe breath work could be another tool in your back pocket, something you can do alongside everything else.
Exactly. It's about having a variety of ways to support your mental health and well-being. It's like adding more colors to your palette.
Yep.
All right, we've talked about SKY, we've connected breathwork to inflammation, but hold on to your hats because we've got one more study to dive into, and this one's a doozy. Okay, so this last study you sent over is a meta-analysis, which I think is super cool because it's like looking at the best of highlights from a whole bunch of research on breathwork.
Exactly. It gives us a much broader perspective because it combines data from lots of individual studies on breath work
Yeah.
and how it impacts our mental well-being.
And what really caught my eye is this meta-analysis didn't just look at one type of breath work. It actually looked at both slow-paced techniques and those more intense, fast-paced ones.
You're right, and that's actually a really important takeaway here. There isn't just one right way to do breath work.
Okay, so for those of us who are new to this whole breathwork thing, can you break down the difference between like slow-paced and fast-paced techniques?
Absolutely. Slow-paced breath work is all about slowing down and deepening your breath. You're intentionally engaging your diaphragm, which can have a really calming effect on your nervous system. Think about practices like box breathing, where you inhale, hold, exhale, and hold for a specific count. Or alternate nostril breathing, where you close off one nostril at a time as you breathe.
Oh yeah, alternate nostril breathing. I've tried that one before. It's surprisingly relaxing.
It is. Now, on the flip side, you have fast-paced breath work. This is where you're breathing more rapidly and rhythmically, like in the Wim Hof method or certain yogic breathing exercises, which can be super energizing.
Okay, so like breath of fire where you're actively pumping your stomach as you breathe.
Precise.
So this meta-analysis looked at both ends of the spectrum, from like super chill breathing to like more energetic breathing.
Yeah.
What did they find?
Well, the really fascinating thing is that regardless of whether people were practicing slow or fast breath work, they reported feeling less stressed, anxious, and depressed.
Wow, so it seems like finding the right style of breath work for you is key. Kind of like finding the right workout routine or meditation style.
Exactly. It's all about figuring out what resonates with you and what helps you feel your best.
It's about tuning into your own body and what it needs. I love that. You know, when we were talking about the SKY program earlier, you mentioned it incorporated specific breathing techniques. Can you tell me more about those?
Of course, SKY uses a few key techniques, including Ujjayi breath, Pastrika breath, and a core technique called Sudarshan Kriya.
Those names sound intense. What do they involve?
Well, Ujjayi, sometimes called victory breath, is all about slowing down your breath and creating this soft, almost oceanic sound in the back of your throat. It's incredibly calming and helps to really focus the mind. You might have even practiced it in a yoga class.
I think I have. It does ring a bell. Okay, what about Pastrika breath?
Pastrika, or bellows breath, is a bit more energizing. It involves these rapid, forceful breaths, kind of like you're pumping a bellows. It can be really invigorating and helps to clear out your airways.
So you've got calming, you've got energizing.
Hmm.
What about this Sudarshan Kriya? That sounds pretty mysterious and powerful.
It's definitely at the heart of SKY. It translates to healing breath and involves a rhythmic pattern of slow, medium, and fast breaths. It's like a symphony for your lungs. And it seems to have a pretty profound impact on the autonomic nervous system, which is like our body's command center for things like stress response.
Wow, so it's not just about the physical act of breathing, but the ripple effects it has on our internal systems.
You got it.
That makes me think about this study with axial spondyloarthritis and how it combined breath work with cold exposure. What's the deal with cold exposure anyway?
Well, think about how you feel after a cold shower. Invigorated, awake. There's actually quite a bit of research suggesting that cold exposure can be really good for both our physical and mental health. It can boost circulation, reduce inflammation, and even lift our mood.
I've heard people rave about cold showers, but I'll admit I'm not quite ready to take the plunge.
It's definitely not for everyone, but it's pretty amazing how our bodies respond to those quick bursts of cold.
So going back to that axial spondyloarthritis study,
Yeah.
they combined cold exposure with breath work and meditation. Did they use any specific breathing techniques?
They did. The primary technique they used was a combination of hyperventilation and breath holds.
Wait, hyperventilation as in breathing too fast. That sounds a little intense.
It can be, yes. But in this context, it's a controlled practice done with trained professionals. And it's been shown to have some really interesting effects on the nervous and immune systems.
This is where it loops back to inflammation, right?
Exactly. Studies are suggesting that this type of breathing practice can trigger the release of anti-inflammatory molecules in the body. Pretty incredible, right?
It's like we have this built-in healing mechanism that we can tap into just by changing how we breathe.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing.
So we've got the breathing exercises, the cold exposure, and then they added meditation to the mix as well.
They did. The meditation used in this study was mindfulness meditation, which is all about focusing your attention on the present moment, noticing thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Ah, classic mindfulness.
Exactly. And when you combine mindfulness with the breathing exercises and cold exposure, you're basically hitting the reset button on your system. It's a powerful trifecta for managing stress, improving focus, and just feeling better overall.
I think it's important to point out, though, this specific combination of therapies was designed for people with axial spondyloarthritis. Listeners should definitely not try this at home without proper guidance.
Absolutely. This is not a DIY situation. It's crucial to work with a qualified professional who can guide you safely and effectively.
Safety first, always. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different techniques, but I want to zoom out for a minute. Why is it that something as simple as breathing can have such a huge impact on our mental and physical well-being?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it all goes back to the mind-body connection, the fact that our thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations are not separate but totally intertwined.
Yeah, it's like this intricate dance happening inside us all the time.
Exactly. And our breath is a powerful tool because it acts like a bridge between our conscious and subconscious minds. We can consciously control our breath, but it's also regulated by our autonomic nervous system, that autopilot mode, that controls things like our heart rate, digestion, and stress response.
So even though we don't consciously tell our heart to beat or our food to digest, we can use our breath to influence those systems.
That's exactly it. It's pretty amazing. When we do specific breathing exercises, we're sending signals to our nervous system that can either calm it down or give it a boost. And this, in turn, can affect everything from our blood pressure to our hormone levels, even our immune response.
It's like we have this internal control panel, and the breath is how we interact with it.
I love that analogy. You're spot on. And the coolest part is that these effects can happen pretty quickly. Even a few minutes of focused breathing can shift our physiology and bring us into a more balanced state.
So it's like a quick tune-up for the mind and body.
You could say that.
You know, it's funny. We're talking about the power of the breath like it's this new discovery.
Yeah.
But humans have been practicing breath work for centuries.
It's true. And it makes you wonder, what did they know that we're just starting to rediscover?
Right. Maybe they were onto something. Speaking of which, we've covered a lot of ground here. In our final segment, I'd love to chat about how we can actually put all of this amazing information into practice. What are some simple ways we can start incorporating breath work into our daily lives? Stay tuned, folks. We'll be back in a jiffy. Welcome back, listener. We've explored all this fascinating research on breath work, seeing how something so simple could have a huge impact on our, mental and physical well-being. But now, let's get practical. How can we actually use this information to feel calmer, manage stress, and just, feel better in our day-to-day lives?
That's the exciting part, isn't it? The beauty of breathwork is that it's accessible to pretty much anyone, anywhere, anytime. You don't need any fancy equipment or special training.
Right. That's what makes it so appealing. It's like having a superpower in your back pocket, ready to go whenever you need it.
Exactly. And even just a few minutes of focused breathing can make a difference.
So for our listeners who are thinking, okay, I'm ready to give this a try, where would you recommend they start? We've talked about a lot of different techniques from SKY to Wim Hof. What feels like a good entry point?
I always suggest starting simple, with a technique that's easy to learn and doesn't feel, overwhelming. Something like box breathing.
Box breathing. That's the one used by Navy SEALs, right?
Yeah.
Stay calm under pressure.
That's the one. It's surprisingly effective.
Remind me how it works again.
It's super simple. You inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold again for 4.
So it's like drawing a square with your breath. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold.
Exactly. And you can adjust the count if 4 seconds feels too long or too short. Find what feels comfortable for you.
And the best part is you can do it anytime, anywhere, at your desk, on the bus, even in line at the grocery store, when that person in front of you is taking forever.
It's true. It's a great way to sneak in a little moment of calm, no matter where you are.
It's like a portable stress buster. Now, another technique I found really helpful is alternate nostril breathing. It's a little more involved than box breathing, but I find it super effective for calming my mind.
It's a great one for balancing the nervous system. Do you want to walk our listeners through it?
Sure. So you're basically using your thumb and ring finger to gently close off one nostril at a time. You inhale through one nostril, exhale through the other, and then switch sides. I like to imagine I'm balancing out the left and right sides of my brain as I do it.
I love that.
And for those listeners who are feeling a little more adventurous, want to try a more challenging technique, there's always the Wim Hof method.
Ah, yes, the Wim Hof method. That one definitely falls into the advanced practice category.
It does. And it's important to remember, listener, this one is not for everyone. It's intense and should definitely be learned from a qualified instructor.
Yeah.
But it's the one that's been linked to reducing inflammation, which is pretty incredible.
It is. And it speaks to the power of these more dynamic breathing techniques.
Okay, so those are a few techniques to get us started. But beyond the specifics, are there any general tips or things to keep in mind when we're first starting out with breath work?
Definitely. First and foremost, be kind to yourself. Breath work is a practice, and like any practice, it takes time and patience. Don't get discouraged if you don't feel like a Zen master after your first try.
Exactly. It's not a competition.
And it's not about forcing yourself to breathe a certain way. It's about exploring, experimenting, and finding what feels good in your body.
I love that. It's a journey of self-discovery.
Exactly. And as you explore, pay attention to how you feel, notice any sensations, any shifts in your energy or mood.
So it's not just about breathing in and out. It's about bringing awareness to the experience.
Precisely. It's about tuning into the subtle and sometimes not so subtle ways that your breath influences your mind and body.
That's really beautiful when you think about it. This simple act of breathing, connecting us to this whole inner world.
It is. And it's a world that's always available to us.
We just have to remember to breathe. Listener, we've covered a lot of ground today, exploring the incredible world of breath work and how it can be a powerful tool for managing our mental and physical well-being. We've explored the science, dug into different techniques, and hopefully inspired you to give breath work a try.
Remember, even just a few minutes a day can make a difference. So find a quiet space, close your eyes, and take a deep breath. You might be surprised by what you discover.
And on that note, we'll leave you to breathe, explore, and discover. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Join us on October 10th for the Shift event hosted by SF Tech Week.
If you like today's podcast, share your thoughts on X, Instagram, or Facebook. We'll be reposting our favorite comments. And that wraps up this episode. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, the shift is now. Agency, powered by 5D Studios.